To our global business report, the death toll following the collapse of an incomplete 21-story building in Ikoyi area of Lagos, Gerard Road, has topped 30. Yet another day has passed without any new survivor recorded since Tuesday. The Lagos State government has declared 3 days of mourning and has inaugurated a 6-member panel to investigate the collapse of the structure, which was still under construction. For a wrap on the 4th day of the search and rescue operation, our rights correspondent Adefemi Akison is sending this report.
Against the backdrop of workers going through the rubble, more bodies were unearthed, this time taking the death toll above 30. Among them, it's believed, is Femi Oshibono, the 53-year-old property developer of this collapsed building. With his demise has gone the opportunity to get answers in his words, but the questions remain. And that's why the Lagos State government has inaugurated a 6-member panel to investigate the collapse.
It's an important assignment that indeed generations coming behind us will not forgive us if we do not do the right thing. Indeed, the government of Lagos State want to unravel and get to the root cause of what had happened, so that indeed we all can learn and truly learn from this very, very, very unfortunate incident, and we all can be part of history and ensure that we can live in a safe and secure environment.
Back at the site, the governor confirmed no formal employee, project manager or otherwise had made themselves known to the authorities.
There are clear, professional misconduct here, in my view, right, which I believe the panel we've given them an assignment in which they will get, to the root of it, were there consultants that were appointed before, were there people that were engaged before, what had happened to them, what had been their relationship with the promoters and the proponents of this. So these are some of the things that they will throw up, and we'll get answers to them in the course of the weeks ahead.
The 2 buildings still standing will be subject to integrity tests starting Friday. The Lagos State governor has announced 3 days of mourning. Flags will be flown at half-mast in both public and private buildings. And meanwhile, the work of the investigative panel will continue. Indeed, it's answers that the people want. And according to the Lagos State government, it's answers that they'll get. Adefemi Akinsanya, Arise News, Ikoyi, Lagos.
Now, is the tragic building collapse in the highbrow residential area of Ikoyi, Lagos, a blow to Nigeria's real estate industry? Real estate developers under the spotlight after the revelations following the building collapse in Lagos this week. Joining me now to discuss this further is Tobi Adama, CEO of AlphaCrux, a real estate firm. Tobi, good morning, a good Friday to you, even though it's been a very sad week so far, not just here in Lagos, but the entire Nigeria, when very unfortunate incidents of this happen. So, does the real estate market in one of Africa's most expensive property sector, would it be able to shrug off this as a one-off incident and just move on? Or is this going to be a lasting impact? Is this a turning point in the manner of speaking?
Good morning, Bolsin. Thank you for having me. Indeed, this is a very sad time. And I'd like to join the millions of Nigerians and commiserate with the families of the victims of the Ikoyi collapse building. Back to your question, in terms of if the real estate market is resilient, if this is a one-off event, what I can say is that the market has no memory. Events like this happen all over the world, and it doesn't have any significant impact in terms of transactions that will happen in the industry. What we know will happen now is that there will be, a flight to safety. There will be a flight to quality. There will be a flight to professionals and people doing proper due diligence before they invest in real estate asset class.
Is there shared responsibility between the developers and regulators when it comes to required approvals and adhering to safety codes, quality, and standards? Because again, yes, like you rightly said, buildings do collapse around the world, but again, this is not just an incident, it's an incident that impacts on lives. So that's the most important part of it. If an empty building collapses, well, that's bad business. But again, when you have humans, individuals in it who loses their life, in particular when the building is still under construction, And that says a whole lot. So what does that say about the quality of standards, regulation, and sanctions within your industry in real estate?
Thank you, Bosi. I don't think this is the best time to be apportioning blames. We have an existing system where the government acts as regulator. We have an existing system where developers, they select the best professionals, because the real estate development process involves quite an array of partnerships with different types of professionals to come together to achieve the end product. What I would like to say, when events like this happen, sharing blames will not move us forward. But in terms of accountability, people should be accountable. The government should be accountable. Developers should be accountable. All stakeholders should be accountable.
Yes.
And when I say accountable,
Mr. Adama, may I respectfully cut in that it is time to apportion blame? Now, I'll tell you why. Now, if you don't apportion blame, how do you apportion responsibility? Because you run an organization, you've got to apportion blame so you know who to hold responsible. So you put people in charge and everybody has his role to play in developing a property. So we need to apportion blame. In fact, we're talking about 30 lives in this particular instant and we don't want to apportion blames. I completely disagree. We need to apportion blames to know exactly what happens to human lives. That is very important so that we know that this will take perhaps a longer time before we'll see a recurrence.
Again, Bosin, we already know how the development process works. We already know all the different stakeholders involved. Taking responsibility and apportioning blames are two different things. We don't need to apportion blame before the right agencies should, come up and own up that we've not done our job to the best, of our abilities. And this should be a time for everybody, all stakeholders, to not just reflect, but to develop blueprints that will forestall events like this happening. This is where risk management comes in. This is where all hands must be on.
There are blueprints already existing, sir, Mr. Adama, with due respect. There are existing blueprints. There are standards set, quality standards set by the Lagos State government, by all agencies responsible in the housing sector, in the real estate sector. Were those existing parameters being adhered to before we form a new one?
So you're very correct, Bosin. Everything is subject to improvement. Everything is subject to monitoring. Everything is subject to, best practices. Again, there are blueprints. Are they being followed to the letter? Obviously not. And can they be followed to the letter? Yes. And can they be improved on? Yes. So for me, I think this is the time for, everybody to come together and make sure that we forestall events like this. We can even start from doing like a holistic audit of existing buildings. That's a good place to start. And, prevent events like this happening. We cannot just leave it to the government agencies. We can have peer accountabilities. We can have industry professionals. We can have, different groups whereby, we have some form of independent evaluation coming into the mix. My opinion is, instead of, looking at, blaming and how do we prevent this from happening in the future? That is what I'm most concerned about.
I love what you just said about peer standard, peer accountability. Would you say that within you folks in the private sector, between the architects, the developers, and others, do you think you folks can put something together that is like a self-regulatory agency within amongst yourself? For example, the Lagos State governor just put together a committee to look into what happened now. So a committee comprising of all of you who are critical stakeholders within the industry set up something like that could do integrity tests, that could check for some of these things, so that way a stitch in time can save 9.
Essentially, you hit the nail on the head. That is the direction that we will take. Because I believe the time is right for us to have, agencies coming together, forming an independent body. Because, both in this affects everybody. It affects, the practitioners, it affects the developer, it affects the government. not to talk about the families that have lost loved ones. So again, I think we'll have to come together, have different measures that we'll put in place to forestall an incident like this. This is it's one, that is happening too frequently. Buildings are meant to last for centuries. So I think we need to do more work as practitioners in the industry. We need to come together, form an independent body, whereby we also, there are times that, I go to some real estate development projects.
So,
and
Mr. Adama, very quickly, I have a few more questions with you. Do you think too many buildings, new structures are coming up in Ikoyi? Is there still a room for more, considering the topography of Ikoyi, for example, just by the sea and the lagoon? Do you think the structure, the earth structure of Ikoyi can still take a whole lot more of these very heavy, high-rise buildings?
I believe there's room for more developments in Ikoyi. If you look at our demography, if you look at our population, if you look at urbanization, the tallest building in Lagos right now is about 32 floors. We haven't even started. There should be room for us to go up horizontally and thereby having more units to, cater for the, teeming population of Lagos as an urban center.
Okay, so in terms of tragedies of this nature, in terms of fake substandard raw materials, safety issues, when you go all the way, not just in construction, but even when it comes to electronic fittings, such as cabling and other things like that, and other appurtenances that you need for a building, does this raise the game as well with the Standard Organization of Nigeria and maybe other agencies?
Again, I'll take you back to my initial, point, whereby I say all stakeholders, all hands must be on deck. There's been a proliferation of substandard, products across the industry and even, generally. A few things to blame for that, but again, it's not the time to blame. It's the time to making sure that the right agencies do what they're supposed to do. We check the quality of materials going into it, and normally, the way these things work is your pricing, your location usually determines the type of materials that you use. But, you can also import substandard goods. So it's not a function of maybe locally produced goods are substandard. So the onus is on all stakeholders, from the developer to the government agencies, monitoring and doing different evaluations of materials. I just think we need to take the job or the business more seriously. I think we need to be considerate when we do businesses that have impact on human lives. We must never prioritize money over the lives of people. So many families are crying right now, they're bereaved. It's not a good place to be. And it's so unfortunate that when events like this happen, after a while, we forget and we move on. We should have a way to make sure that we remember these things, and make sure that we prevent them from ever happening.
Tobi Adama, CEO at AlphaCrux, a real estate firm. Thank you very much for sharing this particular sad moment in Lagos and Nigeria's history this week. Thank you so much. You do have the rest of the day. Enjoy yourself and the weekend. Thank you so much.